The Loomis Method, the Reilly Abstraction and the Asaro Head. These are probably the most famous methods and tools for drawing a head. But which one should you use when? And where exactly do you start? To find out, let's first look at each one by itself. The Loomis Method is a step-by-step system for drawing a head that was developed by Andrew Loomis. It is present in most of his books, but is described in most detail in Drawing the Head and Hands from 1956. It breaks the basic structure of the head down into simple forms. In a nutshell, the method works like this. It all starts with a ball. Then you draw vertical and horizontal center lines. Then you cut off the sides of the head. Then you lengthen the center line of the face and divide it into 3 equal parts. Then you draw the jaw, the eyebrows, and finally you place all the features. The eyes, the ears, the nose and the lips. With all the guides and simple shapes, the Loomis Method helps you get the basic structure and proportions right, and it shows you how to place all the features correctly. It can quickly produce solid results for beginners. Also, it allows you to draw the head from any angle. To do this, you have to rotate the ball in perspective and draw the center lines around the ball. You need to think in 3 dimensions instead of just 2. While the basic front view of the Loomis Method is quick to learn, this 3D view is much harder. It requires at least some experience drawing simple forms in perspective correctly. Next up is the Reilly Abstraction. The Reilly Abstraction was created by Frank Reilly at the beginning of the 1900s. Reilly has never published a book on it, but he taught it in art school for about 30 years. The Reilly Abstraction describes the head in a different way than the Loomis Method. Instead of being rather technical and focusing on straight construction lines like the Loomis Method, the Reilly Abstraction focuses more on rhythm and flow. It shows how all the facial forms connect and kind of flow into each other. The method uses a lot of circles and curved lines to emphasize the rhythms of the face. To do this, it not only incorporates the basic structure of the head like the Loomis Method, but also things like bones, muscles, wrinkles and other anatomical details. For example, it uses circles for the eyeballs and the chin, and curved lines that kind of represent the cheekbones. Therefore, it's more useful if you already have a basic understanding of proportions and anatomy. You can learn more about this method in the book Mastering Drawing the Human Figure by Jack Faragasso, who is actually a student of Reilly. I'll put a link to all the books I mentioned in this video in the description box down below. The Asaro Head is a different animal altogether. It was invented by John Asaro in 1976 and is a simplified model of the planes of the head. You can actually buy a real one on planesofthehead.com. Typically it's not used for constructing a head drawing, it's just too geometric for that. Its purpose is to act as a model for light and shadow. Shading itself is indeed a complex topic, but the simple planes of the Asaro Head can help you understand it faster. Unlike the Reilly model, the Asaro Head is rather simple and doesn't show any muscles or anything like that. The shapes are deliberately kept simple and flat, so you get a clear separation between light and shadow. When you've drawn your head, you can use the Asaro Head as a reference model for how light and shadow fall. Just put the Asaro Head under a specific light source to achieve the lighting you want and use that as a reference. Apart from using it as a reference, you can also use it to create basic light and shadow studies with simple exercises. I recommend checking out my 2 Asaro Head videos where I describe this in detail. The links will be in the description below and also at the end of the video. Plot twist. When talking about the Loomis Method, everyone just thinks about the basic construction method. But did you know that Andrew Loomis actually had his own version of the Asaro Head? That's right, 20 years before the Asaro Head was invented, Loomis showed a similar model in his book. He called it Basic and Secondary Planes of the Head. Also, way back in 1943, he already used a simple mannequin head to show some basic lighting situations. Another thing is that the Loomis Method and the Reilly Abstraction look somewhat different at first. But if you compare them, actually both methods start with a simple ball. And in both, the sides are cut off. So altogether, these head drawing methods are maybe not as different as you might think at first. But still, all of them have their place for sure. In isolation, each one has a specific advantage. The Loomis Method is great for beginners to learn the basic construction and shape of the head. It also offers a useful step-by-step process. The Reilly Abstraction is good for making your drawings more rhythmic and flowing and making them feel less constructed. And the Asaro Head is a useful tool when you try to learn about light and shadow. And this is actually a good sequence to follow. Try the Loomis method first to become familiar with the basic shape of the head. Once you've gotten the hang of it, try experimenting with the Reilly abstraction to put more flow into your drawings. And finally use the Asaro Head to learn how light and shadow fall on a head. And actually you can use this exact sequence on one specific drawing as well. Start with the basic Loomis head, draw flow lines from the Reilly abstractions on top, and then use the Asaro Head as a shading reference. But as John Asaro himself said, this knowledge of the head is only a start. One must find his or her own path. There comes a time when you will probably break the rules. You will break free of these constrained models and the exact step-by-step process. Because the more heads you draw, the more intuitive your ability to draw the basic head shape will become. And you will kind of get a feeling for getting the proportions right without hundreds of lines to guide you. The more experience you gather, the less you will depend on drawing the exact construction every single time. You might even find that you end up mixing and matching certain elements from different head drawing methods. Just use what you feel is useful and discard what's not. And still you can always fall back on these basic methods of construction whenever you feel stuck or when you're trying to draw new or extreme angles. Going back to the basics is always a good idea. Now make sure to check out these two videos on screen right now. In these I go into more detail on how to master light and shadow with the Asaro Head. Thanks for watching.